Welcome to Brake Check Show on the Texas Truck Channel. Behind me I have the all-new Acura Integra. This is the 5th generation Integra, based on the 11th generation Civic. We had a few years where we didn't have anything. We had an RSX, we had some other things in between, the ILX. Some say this should have been one of those. It's not, it's the Integra. The reason it's the Integra is because it's sporty and it's fun to drive, especially with the A-Spec package with technology. It gets you the manual. This is the only way to get the manual, top trim only. That's the way to get it. Don't get the CVT, I'm just telling you. We'll get to the more on that later, but before we get into that exterior, here's what I love about this, the hatch. This hatch is awesome. It looks great, it looks sleek, it opens up and you have tons of room. You don't need a crossover with this thing. Don't get a crossover. Acura is telling you don't get a crossover with this. Also, some little details on the exterior. I love that Integra is embossed in the right rear and the opposite on the front left. That's pretty cool. I like how Acura is in the headlights. That looks good. And then speaking of headlights, these work great. They look wonderful. As far as the rest of the exterior goes, side leaves a little to be desired, and the front, I'm not sure what's going on there except that they're trying to keep the corporate look going. So that's that. With that, let's go on to the interior and see what Brian has to say with that.
Let's talk interior on the all-new Integra. Right off the bat, I'm a big, tall person. I've got a tall torso, and I am incredibly comfortable in this car. All too often, I get into sport compact cars or cars of this size, and I go, bam, and I hit my head, or even bigger vehicles, and this seat gets low enough, the base is long enough, and it's also bolstered to be incredibly supportive. Something I find that's a little bit funky is that with the A-Spec, you get this really cool red interior. You get Alcantara and leather on the front seats, but leather only on the back seats. I'm not sure if that's a funding issue, trying to be cheaper, not doing Alcantara out back, or if that's purposeful to try and keep you held in the seats. Now, we've said that, it holds you in the seats quite well. I'm happy with that. Some things you don't get that you would find in like a Hyundai or a Kia at this price point are ventilated seats. They are heated, but they are not ventilated. But they breathe way better than you think they do. A few things you get in here that you won't get in the SI that this thing is basically mechanically sharing is memory seats. We like that a lot. You get a really good ELS Studio 3D stereo. They got a whole team of engineers that have engineered this stereo to work well, and it does just that. One thing you do get that the SI does not have is on the drive modes. You have an individual setting which allows you to configure steering, powertrain, and suspension independently, however you'd like it. So if you want comfort steering, sporty engine, and soft suspension or medium suspension, you can do that. Otherwise, it's the traditional dynamic mode selector of the normal sport and comfort. Infotainment, we're going to briefly hit on this. It's the current generation with a volume knob. Thank you, Honda, for bringing that back. Infotainment in the middle. The center cluster is fully digital, and it has some really smart things with the Honda Sense package I like a lot. When you're doing the lane centering function, it not only tells you how you're in your lane, if you're centered within the paint, it also tells you who is on your left and right. It'll pick out a motorcycle between a vehicle. It'll tell you if that vehicle is swerving in its lane, if it's centered up or not. Pretty cool stuff like that. Really happy with that. And also it tells you if your blinkers are on while you're driving. So it gives you an indicator if you're what the rear of the car looks like, if you're on the brakes, if you get your four-ways on. Just cool, thoughtful engineering. Other than that, it's really straightforward. Dual zone climate control, sunroof, the lot. Things you expect in here. So with all that covered, let's talk mechanics before we go drive it.
Welcome to the under the hood portion of the 2023 Integra A-Spec. A-Spec doesn't really mean a whole lot motor-wise, but it does mean transmission-wise because you get a 6-speed, row your own gears. Oh, thank you. That's what we want. Let's talk about the engine though. This is the first time Acura has been introduced to the L-Series motor. We've seen it in Honda since 2001, but this is the first time we get it here. Specifically, this is the L15CA. I don't really know what all that mumbo jumbo means, but all you Honda fanboys will, so here's what it means for those that aren't. It's a 1.5 liter turbo, good for 200 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 192 pound-feet of torque, basically the entire way. It says it needs 91 octane, but it also says on the fuel filler door you can put 87 in, so do what you want. Fuel the way it is, and put 87 in, I'll just tell you. But all that means is it's good for 26 city, 36 highway, 30 combined, which is funny because when Brian had it, and when he was driving around, he got 28, I got 32 in my drives, so 30 splits the middle. It's about right where it needs to be. The other fun news with the A-Spec in this Integra is you get the limited slip differential, and that is really nice, and it's connected to a really nice suspension, which Brian's going to tell us about right now in the next segment.
Coming to you live from the bowels of a volcano is the nuts and bolts portion of the Acura Integra. We're going to start with the rubber. This guy rolls on a 235/40/18, and it's still kind of heavy, even though it's an aluminum wheel. This tire has a 400 turbo rating. It is definitely a city tire. It's not an autocross tire, but it does handle pretty well, and it's really quiet. We're overall very happy with it. Starting up front, we have a steel knuckle. Braking wise, we have a 12.3-inch rotor that is vented. That's enough, but it's a single piston caliper that is floating. Nothing special here, but it's definitely getting the job done. We've not faded the brakes once. Now, the interesting part is this car has adjustable dampers on all four corners. They're tied directly to your drive modes. You have normal, comfort, and sport, and also individual that allows you to change the configuration of the vehicle beyond the suspension. We'll talk about that more when we drive it. But out back, it's a little bit more interesting. It's a multi-link with 4 mounting points. It has a swing arm running the lengthwise of the vehicle, and then diagonally it looks like a dog bone upper control arm. And more interestingly, it's an aluminum rear knuckle. I find that odd. Usually you'll find an aluminum up front and a steel in the rear. I'm curious as to the logic there. It might be a strength decision right there. Now the downside is the rear rotors are smaller and they're also non-vented. But again, it has just worked, so we can't really complain about it. All that covered, let's get on the road and talk about how it drives.
All right, Brian, 200 horsepower and dynamic suspension and all that fun stuff. Let's see what it does. Hit it with an Integra, baby!
Retake, baby! Ooh!
Oh.
40, 50, red line, turbo fell off 60. Okay, there we go, Craig.
0 to 60 in
7.5.
It is really hot. It's been 100 degrees all week since we've had this car.
It's reading 102 right now. And look, before you comment, y'all did it wrong. I've tried several times. These are normal methods. Yes, I can drive a manual. Been doing this for years. I did get numbers less than that, but the corrected factor, because I was on a decline, is 7.48. Has been our average time over multiple runs. So I think it's safe to say.
Okay, so we've talked about the engine. We've talked about the suspension. How does it translate to the street? Does it live up to the Integra name?
Do not call me a driver's car.
Oh, what?
That's what this is.
So is it an Integra?
I don't know. And Honda boys, please comment below, but here's what it feels like to drive. It feels way nicer than I was expecting.
Yes.
And probably the nicest thing Honda or Acura has ever produced and that I've spent time in. Maybe the MDX is an exclusion, but all the current Acura stuff is really good. Yeah. But it's not a driver's car. The engine is sufficient. It's not exciting. Right. It's a 1.5 turbo. It's don't expect a 9,000 RPM 2-liter or B18 with an LS head and all these cool Honda things we grew up with.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Not happening.
Not high revving, but it gets around fine. And the turbo isn't completely on the bottom, so I do appreciate that. It does run out to about 5,000, 5,500.
And that's one of the things they've done with this engine we talked about in the shop, but it's that you get a little bit, you feel a little bit sooner than in some of the previous applications. So we do get the best version here. It is smooth and quiet. The NVH is really low, which is good and bad. Why is it good and bad?
All right, I just want to start with the good. The good side of it is it's incredibly mature. It's incredibly comfortable and quiet, and I would drive cross country without thinking about it.
Oh, me too.
And that's on top of the comfortable seats and everything else that we like in here. It is quiet on the highway, and small front-wheel drive cars are not known for that.
No.
This does it really well. The downside is that translates to the clutch pedal as well.
Yes.
And you feel nothing. You have no idea where the engagement point is. The engagement point is off your memory with your ankle, not with the pedal or the powertrain.
The position of the pedal.
Exactly.
Has nothing to do with any feel.
And now, this is not the first car we've driven like that, but Hondas are not known for that. They're known for very forgiving and very intuitive manuals. I'm not saying the transmission is bad. I'm saying this particular package is not brilliant.
No, it's an okay transmission. That's not a problem.
Fine. No, transmission's fine.
But it's really, feels a little disconnected. The word we were using when we were texting each other and taking turns driving this was it feels like it's simulated. Like almost
completely feels simulated.
It's so modern and simulated that when you hit the clutch pedal and do other things, like, is it just simulating this action or is it actually happening?
Okay, but we came around because at one point we said, maybe you get the auto with this type of car because it is so nice.
Right.
And then after a day we both said, no, we were wrong.
Yes.
The manual's still the way to do it.
Because even if it's not the best manual, it's still a manual. Thank you,
still
Acura.
in the gear I told it to be in.
Speaking of manuals, when you hit the clutch pedal and you're in adaptive cruise control mode, what happens when you need to downshift a little bit?
Cruise control does not cancel on you. Okay,
the clutch pedal does not cancel the cruise control, only the brake.
Exactly. Every manual I've driven in my entire life of driving, you put the clutch in, cruise is off immediately.
Right. This doesn't do that.
You're going up a hill, you can just change gears, cruise goes, oh, you changed gears, I understand, and it keeps throttle management for you.
Right.
Really cool, I love that.
All right, let's get our final thoughts on this Honda small car platform.
I love it.
All right, Brian, it's time for our final thoughts on the Acura Integra A-Spec.
Manual.
Yes, let's do some objectives and subjectives, and then I want to get into who's this car for.
Okay.
Objectively, Brian, this is an Integra. That's what it says.
It does. It says it right here.
Up on the
yes,
front.
It is. Yeah.
Subjectively, is it?
Not for the boomers that had it in high school, for sure.
Fair enough.
Boomers, elder millennials.
Fair enough. Objectively, it says A-Spec all over the side.
It does.
And leads you that to think that it's got sporty intentions. Does it subjectively?
No.
Yeah, no.
This is not a driver's car. It's not sporty either.
Right. Objectively, it's in the luxury compact class, ready to take the fight to Mercedes, Audi, and BMW.
Yep.
Is it doing that subjectively?
I think absolutely yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Ask me why I would get it.
Why would you get it? Then that's it.
Because it's got a stick.
And that's it. It's European competitors don't give you the option.
Exactly.
You have it
And
here.
that's why it's taking the fight to them.
And even if it's not Honda's best manual or at least clutch configuration, it's so nice to have it. After a
Still
week,
better than nothing.
my takeaway is this thing is super nice. I would go anywhere in it. And even though I wish it wasn't so synthetic, I really like having the manual.
All right, Brian, with that out of the way, who's this car for?
I'm going to tell you right now, Acura is going to say it's for the millennial buyer that is premiering through their career, ready to buy a nice luxury car, but they still value the driving experience.
It's for the guy that is moving on from the monsters and the WRX to the latte
Yes.
and
He has a
professional
collared
job.
shirt, but he still wears shorts. It's okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. It works for me.
Yeah.
A few things I want to hit on though, because this is kind of like a throwback car that an American brand would do. For example, the 05 Mustang was the retro thing. This is throwing back to people that grew up with the Integra being like this halo car when they were in
Sure.
high school or middle school or whatever.
Yeah.
The Integra then was rev to the moon, but be a little nicer than a Civic,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
What's happened now is this is still a manual, but nicer than a Civic.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
But what the Integra was then, it is now in a different way because
Exactly.
no one wants to rev to the moon,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
Exactly. And I think you've nailed it. So
Okay.
that's the point.
Land the plane for me.
The Integra back then, in the golden era, we'll call it.
Yeah.
The Integra, as it is to a Civic, is the same thing as it is today.
Totally.
The Civic doesn't do all those things either anymore. So
It doesn't. That car doesn't exist anymore.
as much as you and I and probably everybody else on the internet wants to call it something else, it's actually it works.
And if Acura made an Integra that revved to 9,000, the NVH would be so high and the safety standards would be so low, no one would buy it.
And-
That's the
right,
reality.
exactly.
So with all that said, I think it's still a success, just not in the way that you think Integra would be.
Exactly. So thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Brake Check Show on Texas Truck Channels. Tune into all our social media accounts. You know where to go.
It's everywhere. TexasTruckChannel.com and mostly on YouTube, Texas Truck Channel.
Got a lot more coming your way. We'll see you next time.
Stay tuned.